In this video, you will learn about forms of percents. Now, as we begin our study of percents, you first must understand what a percent means. So a percent by definition means hundredth, or it means divided by 100. And the symbol for percent is this symbol right here. And when I write it by hand, many times I'll write it like this. So either would be your percent symbol. Now here we see a bunch of different examples of ways that we can say percentage in English. And then we're going to fill in this table to show different ways that we can represent these same expressions. So we can represent these expressions with symbols, we can use fractions, or we can use decimal. So using the symbol, the percent symbol, we can write this as 31 and then the percentage sign after that. So this is 31%. Now remember, percentage means out of 100 or divided by 100. So as a fraction, I can write this as 31 divided by 100. And then as a decimal, when I divide by anything where you have 10 to some power, so like 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, etc. When I divide, all I can do is move the decimal. So here, the shortcut way of converting from fraction to decimal is I see there are two zeros, so I can move the decimal two places. So the decimal was here after the 31, moving it over two places to the left, 1, 2, I'm going to get 0.31. Looking at the next one, 4.6%. I can write this with the percentage symbol as 4.6 and then the percent sign. As a fraction, this would be 4.6 divided by 100. And I can rewrite this, if I wanted to, by getting rid of the decimal. So I can move it over one place to the right by multiplying by 10. Do the same thing to the bottom, multiply by 10. And I get 46 over 1,000. And then you can always reduce as well if you wanted. Now, as a decimal, I see there are three zeros here at the bottom of the fraction, so I can move the decimal place three places. It starts here after the 6, move it to the left three places, 1, 2, and then one more, means I have to add a 0 in the front. So this becomes 0.046. And the 0 before the decimal is not necessary. You could just write this as 0.046 if you prefer. Next we have 321%. So with the symbol, we would do 3, 2, 1, and then the percent sign. As a fraction, we take 321 divided by 100. Or I can think of this as 3 and 21 over 100. So from here, I can write this as a decimal. 21 over 100, I move the decimal from the 1, and I move it two places because there are two zeros I'm dividing by. Move it two places to the left, that becomes 3.21. So as a decimal, I can write that as 3.21. Here we have 0.38%. With the symbol, it would be 0.38 and then the percent sign. As a fraction, this would be 0.38 divided by 100, or I can move the decimal place two places to the right to make this with no decimal on the top. But to do that, I have to multiply the top and the bottom both by 100. So when I multiply by 100 on the top, I have 38, and then 100 times 100 would give me 10,000 on the bottom. And then as a decimal, I see that I'm dividing by a 1 with 4 zeros, so I can move the decimal place 4 places to the left. So it starts here after the 8, moving it 4 places to the left, means I move it 1, 2, and then I need 2 zeros in front, so that would becomes 0.0038. Now we have a fraction with a percent. So 2/5% I can write as 2 over 5 with the percent sign, or I can convert 2 over 5 to a decimal, which is 0.4. So then as a fraction, I can write this as 0.4 divided by 100, or I can move the decimal over to the right, so that way there is no digit after the decimal. And to do that, I multiply top and bottom by 10. And when I do that, I have 4 on the top and then 1,000 on the bottom. So then as a decimal, we can convert by moving the decimal place 3 places to the left, because I'm dividing by a 1 with 3 zeros. So it starts after the 4, move it 3 places to the left. I'm going to have to add 2 zeros in the front to get 0.004. And lastly, we have 66 and 2/3%. Now to write this with the symbol, I just put the percent sign after. And then when I convert to a fraction, it's going to be helpful in this particular case to think of 66 and 2/3 as an improper fraction. So to convert to an improper fraction, I take 66 times 3 plus 2 to get 200 for the top. And then your denominator would be 3. So that's 200 over 3%. Now as a fraction, I take this 200 over 3 and I divide by 100, just like I've been doing here. So 200 over 3 divided by 100. Now that is the same thing as multiplying by 1 over 100. So 200 over 3 divided by 100 is 1 over 100 being multiplied. So when I multiply, I can reduce anything on the top with anything on the bottom. 200 divided by 100 gives me 2 over 1. So now I have 2 times 1 on the top, which is 2, and then 3 times 1, which is 3 on the bottom. So my fraction is 2 over 3. And then as a decimal, 2 over 3 would be 0.6 repeating, and that is one you should have memorized. Next, we're going to work with converting from any of these notations into a different notation. So for example, write 1/5 as a percent. And there's actually 2 ways you can do this. You can use method 1, which is where I take the fraction and then write as a decimal. So 1 over 5 should be memorized to be 0.2. And then as a percent, I simply take this decimal and move it 2 places to the right to make a percent. So move it 2 places to the right. I have 1, 2, I need to add a 0. That becomes 20%. So that is method 1, convert to a decimal, then from decimal to percent. Another method is I can create an equation where I know that 1/5 to convert to a percent means something divided by 100. So I can create an equation where I have 1 over 5 equals x over 100. And then from here I can cross multiply to solve. 5 times x equals 1 times 100, so 5x equals 100. And then from here I can divide both sides by 5. When I divide both sides by 5, on the left I have x, and on the right I have 20. So my solution would be 20 over 100, which would be 20%. So 20% is my solution. Next we have 2 more examples, and for each of these examples I will walk you through both of the methods of converting. So here we're writing 2/3 as a percent. So using method 1, I convert the fraction to a decimal. So 2/3 should be memorized as 0.6 repeating, or 0.666, etc. And then to convert to a percent, I simply move the decimal place 2 places to the right, 1, 2, which would be 66.6666 repeating, which would be 66.7% if you round it. Using the other method, I can write an equation where I know 2/3 I can convert to something over 100, which would be my percentage. So I can get that equation. I can then cross multiply 3 times x, 2 times 100 to get 3x equals 200. And then divide both sides by 3. I have x on the left side, and then 200 over 3 on the right side, which when I divide, I will get 66.7%. 0.66 repeating as my answer. So my solution would be 66.7%. So either way, we get the same solution. One more, we have 3.6 written as a percent. So method 1, we can simply take the 3.6, and this is already in a decimal format. So no need to convert to a decimal because it already is. I can simply move the decimal place 2 places to the right. 1, 2, which means I need to add a 0 at the end. So that becomes 360%. Method 2, I can create an equation. 3.6 equals something out of 100. So I can then use that equation to solve. 3.6 I can think of as 3.6 over 1. I can cross multiply. 1 times x equals 3.6 times 100. So x equals 360. So the x is 360. So we have 360 over 100, which means my percentage would be 360%. Now that we know how to work with percentages, we are going to now use percentages to answer different types of problems. Now, as we answer different types of percentage problems, it is important to realize that the word of would mean multiply, and the word is means equals. So for example, if you were asked 20% of 160 is what number, we can create an equation that we can solve. So 20% is the same thing as 0.2. Of means to multiply. Then you have 160. Is means equals. And then what number, you don't know what that is, that will be your x value. So we have 0.2 times 160 equals x. And we can solve this where 0.2 times 160 would give me 32. So my solution is 32. Here is another example, and we are told that 22 is 30% of what number? So we just take this word by word and create an equation. So we have 22 is means equals, 30% as a decimal is 0.3, of means to multiply, and then what number, that is unknown, so that will be x. So my equation is 22 equals 0.30 times x. And to solve this, I can just get rid of the 0.30 by dividing both sides by 0.30. When I do that, the 0.30's cancel on the right side. We have x equals 22 divided by 0.30, which, if you do it correctly, your answer would be 73.3. So I found that 22 is 30% of the number 73.3. Here's another example. We have 46 is what percent of 60? So here we just translate into math notation. We see 46 is means equals, what percent, that is unknown, of means multiply, then we have 60. So my equation is 46 equals x times 60. I can then solve by dividing both sides by 60. The 60s would cancel. I now have x equals 46 over 60, and if I divide that to get a decimal, I get 0.76 repeating, which the question is asking 46 is what percent of 60. So convert this to a percent by moving the decimal place over 2 places, so now we have 76.66 repeating, which would round to 76.7%. Now with these different equations, many times we might get decimals in there. So it is important to know how to use some shortcuts when working with equations with decimals. What I can do is I can get rid of the decimal by multiplying both sides by some power of 10. So like 10, 100, 1000, etc. So for example, if we had an equation like this, where we have 2.4x equals 30 plus 0.3x. I look to see which number has the most digits past the decimal point. And so for both 2.4 and 0.3, we just have one digit past the decimal place. And so what I can do is multiply by 10 to the first power, because we have one one digit after the decimal. So I multiply everything by 10. So 2.4 multiplied by 10 would give me 24. So we have 24x. 30 times 10 is 300. And 0.3 times 10 is going to be 3. So I have 3x right there. Notice when I multiply by 10, now all the decimals are gone. So this is my new expression, which I can solve by subtracting 3x to bring it over to the left side. That gives me 21x equals 300. And then I can divide both sides by 21. Now I have x equals 300 over 21, which would equal 14.26. Here is another example. So now we have 36 equals 0.1x plus 0.07 times 100 minus x. So what I like to do is get rid of the decimals. And I do that by multiplying everything by 10 to some power. Well, we see here there's one digit after the decimal. Here there are two digits after the decimal. So what I need to do is multiply by a 1 with two zeros after it, or 10 to the second power, because we have two numbers after the decimal here. So multiply every term by 100. Now just be careful, because this right here is considered to be one thing, right? Because of this plus sign. The plus sign is separating this quantity, and this parentheses is being multiplied with 0.07, so it's all together. Okay, so 100 times 36 is 3600. So that's a 3600 equals 100 times 0.1. I move the decimal over two places, 1, 2, to get 10x, and then plus 100 times 0.07, move the decimal over two places to get 7. So I have 7 times 100 minus x. And then from here I can continue to solve. 7 times 100 and 7 times negative x would give me 700 minus 7x. And then we can do 10x minus 7x to get 3x. And then we can bring the 700 over by subtracting. That will cancel. We have 3x equals, and then 3600 minus 700 would give me 2900. And then I can divide both sides by 3. So we have x equals 2900 over 3, which would give me 966.6 repeating. So we can round that to 966.67 if we like. Now, one last concept that we need to know when working with percentages is how to work with word problems. So for example, a clothing store is giving a 30% discount on shirts. How much did Joey pay on a shirt that originally cost $30? So there are two different ways you can think of this. Okay, so the first way is we know that we are being discounted 30%. So if we take the original cost of $30 and multiply it by 30%, that will give me the discount. So 30% of 30, we simply take 0.3 times 30 to get 9. So that is my discount. My discount is $9. So I can subtract that from the original price to get my final price of $21. So that is one way I can calculate my payment. All right, so we paid $21. The other way to consider this is that if it's discounted 30%, that means he is paying 100 minus 30, or 70% of the original price. So if I take 70% of 30, I take 0.17 times 30 to get 21. And this here is my answer. This is what he paid, because he paid 70% of the $30. So either way we want to do this, we get the same solution.